this is Sarah. Thanks for listening to my show, Meant for More Conversations with Sarah Ali Moore, where we explore our greatest potential, the call to serve, and leading heart-centered change with full authenticity. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Meant for More Conversations with me, Sarah Ali Moore. And I'm really excited to have our guest, Kara Buns, tonight. If you haven't had a chance to listen to her TEDx talk, the link is in the description section of our talk this evening. So definitely click that link when we're done tonight and listen to her powerful, moving, and vulnerable story of resilience and coming down this path of wholeness, thriving from addiction, going through a relapse, and coming into her full authenticity and really empowering people to step in and own their realness unapologetically. I love her message in this time right now, especially it hits a marker for me because, some of you have heard my talk, talking about liberating myself and embracing my natural hair. And, it's the process of authenticity that this life is all about, is about releasing the chains of shame that we're carrying and really coming to allow ourselves, right, the freedom to be who we are, to allow ourselves the freedom of our expression, of our voice, of our look. For me, I can't even say of my voice because for so long, I can't tell you how much criticism I used to get about the way that I talked. And embracing all of that, right, is the path of authenticity. And really, it's the path of letting go of shame, the path of letting go of judgment. And so I'm really looking forward to this discussion tonight with Kara. She is really she just is like magnificent and just carries so much resonance. And I think you're going to really connect with her message and her story tonight. So I'm going to bring her in. If you guys would help me welcome Kara Buns. Hi, Kara.
Hi.
Good to see you tonight. Thanks so much for joining me.
I am so honored. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yes. So how do you feel doing a TEDx talk? Like, how did you feel about getting that talk even?
OMG. So I tried to put everything that I had into my application the year prior. And I relapsed. The day before I was submitting, I ended up in a rehab.
Oh my
and so, TEDx wasn't a priority any longer at that point.
Right.
And so, that's part of my journey. And I went through rehab and came out on the other side. And so when TED applications opened up last summer, I've got a heart entry already. The interesting part though is my talk changed. So, I'm preparing to try to, submit the same talk, and it was not the talk that I should be submitting. It's changed now.
Yes.
And it dramatically changed. And it changed into what my talk ultimately was, which was, authenticity and owning who we are, right? All of our stories. I language it and say, own your unapologetic realness. And what that means is just embracing our stories. And so I tried really hard. It was something that was a passion project for me. If I would not have gotten in 2020, I would have just kept going and, until I got in. It was something that was in my soul that wanted to come out.
Oh, that's beautiful. So you always had your sights sort of set on this opportunity in doing this. And I love that I love that your story is one of not giving up, even in times when you really, it's like the hardest. And even in your story of coming to the TEDx stage, it's staying committed to making that vision happen. And how beautiful that it opened up for you. And I I have to say, it's the message that I think has been shared far and wide. I mean, I would say in TEDx terms, it might have gone viral, is how how Michael, had mentioned it when it got posted. And that's what's been a lot of fun too, is to watch as these talks get released, how we're all celebrating one another and watching our talks and connecting to those messages. But I just have to say that, yeah, your message, and it's being amplified in such a large way from that TEDx stage. And it's really powerful. So I'm so glad that we get to carry that message even further tonight.
I am too.
Yeah. You have probably one of the best lines of the talks, Carrie. I just have to say, you open up with, I think I want to be a junkie when I grow up, said no one ever. That wasn't my dream. It's just so captivating already. And your story just carries on, really capturing onto the heart of every person. And you really bring up this, your story and your message carries this idea of, the dashed dreams that we carry, that we suppress, we repress, or that we think are not possible. And because life unfolds differently than we think, where do you, or how did you find the silver lining through the challenges that you face? And how would you advise, what sort of advice would you give those who are sitting in a place right now where they're feeling like their dreams or their hopes are being lost, and how can they re-engage those again through that difficulty, through that struggle?
That's a big question. It's a big question. How did I find the silver lining, through all that? And then how would I, chat with someone who is struggling in that same capacity? We each get a choice. We get a choice. You either can go, you can either choose this direction or you can choose this direction, right? And I've always, when I was struggling in addiction for 18 years, chose the path that was the easiest, and it was the biggest road, and it was the easiest, and it was, it always turned out the same way, right? And then when I was released from incarceration in 2013 is when I started to really understand the advantages of choosing the narrow road, right? So a different way of thinking, a different way of subscribing to life. And on that journey, I've come to understand much more so in the past year and a half, actually, since my relapse. But how very much our thoughts affect things. Our thoughts affect our entire lives, right? And so when you say, "How did I find the silver lining?" Today, I can tell you, I don't know any other way. I don't know any other way than to choose to look at what I want to choose to look at, right, and focus on. Because if I choose to focus on the negative, I know where that path goes. I know where that path goes to scarcity, and I know where it goes to addiction, and I know where it goes to darkness, right? And I choose a different path today, right? We each get that choice. So I would encourage somebody who's struggling in that capacity to reach out for resources, depending upon whatever they're struggling with. There's tons of resources, not just for the various addictions that are out there, but those are the ones I'm obviously familiar with. But reach out for resources and assistance, and then make a decision on what you want to focus on, right? Because it's literally that easy. It's actually, I should back up. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Right. Right. Yes. Yeah. It's simple, but not easy. I had a friend point out to me at a time when I was really struggling to move forward. Because I kept, it's that, like you were saying, that critic, that voice, right? That tells you that you can't. It's like that resistance. When that resistance comes up, it's that resistance is showing you, that you're on the right path. Because if that resistance wasn't there, then you wouldn't know that there was something else on the other side. And so she pointed out to me this, like, thinking about, I think there's this book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, right? And she explained it in this way that was sort of like how it's explained in this book. Like, when you're about to take this leap, when you're in the middle of that space, like the void really is what I would call it. There's a point where you look down, and looking down is like that negativity that's like, you're going to fall into the darkness, right? Or there's like where you're leaping to, but that's also unknown. And it's because you have these two unknowns that is scary. But like you said, you kind of make a decision. You don't, both are sort of like unknowns. Both are kind of going into the void some way. But one has the potential of something else, whereas the other one is like takes you back, and so that really, helped me to understand that critic, the voice of the critic when it's coming in. So I love that piece of advice, and thinking about shifting your perspective. When it comes to exploring, like redefining your life, and you feel like there's something missing or something unfulfilled. What are the ways that you can get like clarity? Like, what's the path of clarity towards figuring out what the potential might be? Like, is there a way of having a vision or creating a vision of what that is?
I can share what I've done. Yeah. I just got really clear on what my dreams are. And I can tell you exactly a year ago, if you would have asked me, Kara, what are some of your dreams? And what does your perfect day look like? Mm-hmm. I could not have told you. Mm-hmm. I could not have told you for lots of reasons. And the top reason was, it's like I didn't understand that I was worthy enough to have those types of things. I didn't play that creative tape out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was more of like, I've always been driven. Don't get me wrong. I'm very driven, but it was more of like that scarcity mindset of I'll take what I can kind of get and I'll just work. Like, I didn't understand that I could create things with my brain and my physical being, and that all of the vastness of what that is. Mm-hmm. Like, I just didn't understand that. And so what I would encourage somebody in is to just get really, clear on what their dream would be, right? What gets you out of bed? Mm-hmm. What blows your hair back, right? I made some huge changes in my day-to-day, just things that are important to me. The time that I get up, affirmations, like my whole hour and a half, 2 hours first thing in the morning is my time, right? I meditate and I do these things that are intentionally feeding my soul so that I can do what I need to do for the day. And I've never been like that. I've always been the, hit the alarm, roll out of bed at the last minute, race off to do what I'm going to do. And the best way I can explain it is that my life was doing me and I wasn't doing my life. And now there's just this intentionality with my day and my existence and my purpose and, everything that I do, is there's a why behind it. And now I know what my why is, right? And my TED Talk was part of my why. Right. Sharing my story in a really big way is part of my why. And all of that's, rooted in that authenticity and sharing the darker parts of my story, right? So that it opens up that level of connectivity with others that are like, oh gosh, if she can share that, right. it opens up conversations. And so I would say get clear on what your why is, right? So when we know what our dream is and what our whys are, like, it pushes me through when the hard times come. I know why I'm doing everything that I do, even to having this conversation with you right now, right? Because it lines up with my, my bigger why.
Yes. When we're, your story, how you open it up, sharing that vulnerability of your story. First, how did you get to the place where you could be open and vulnerable with your story? Because so much of your talk is centered around the shame you carried about your past, right? But there's a way of like where you really, it's like you were open with your story, but there's a way of which is like you're really embracing it now, which is the really the message of your TED Talk is like really coming into the depth of really embracing it. How did you get there?
It's a journey. I don't know that I'm there. Frankly, I don't know that I'm there. It's a journey. I know that the more that I love and accept myself, the more all of that just becomes, how do I language that? It just kind of is. I don't have emotion towards it.
Yeah.
I'm just doing, it's part of that bigger why. Before, I did it. There's a lot of shocking stuff to my story. And so, sharing that in the past has been a huge defense mechanism for me. I would share it with people, make jokes about it, like just make prison jokes or felon jokes or, meth addict jokes. And I would do that because it was a defense mechanism, hoping that, I could kind of beat you to the punch. And then, in the last 18 months since I had a relapse after, almost 8.5 years clean and sober, it was such a beautiful new beginning, beautiful opportunity to cleanse and just begin again. And, I would say that to answer your question, as succinctly as possible, the more I love myself, the more all of that makes sense, right? The more it's just what I should be doing to open up those conversations and make it more comfortable for everybody. Because when I share my story, it makes it okay for everybody else to share their stuff. It's like, oh gosh, we can do this, right? Yes. It's okay. It's okay. Right. These stories make us they aren't part of who we are necessarily, but they are in the sense of our past.
Yes.
And I was so embarrassed. I was so shameful.
Yeah.
And I can, 100% transparency. I can't tell you that I have that's all gone. I can't, right? I started a new job in like a month and a half ago. And, the second that I see that somebody that my new position, my new company that I'm with, that I see that they've gone to my LinkedIn, my mind immediately goes to, okay, they knew who I am. Right. And you would think that after, the things that I've done and how out I am about my story and loud and proud and these things, but that's the first thing I think is, okay, they see me, right? They see me. So that's full transparency. I don't have this all figured out, right? I'm not like, well, I share my story and I've got it all together and I don't carry any shame about it. No.
I love
that. Holy cow.
Yeah. Every day. Yeah. Every day is a day of Yeah, just embracing yourself more and more. I love that, Kara. And when it comes to, being transparent, yes, that's true. It's like, oh, they really do see. But I'll just say, like, there's also like, man, there's kind of a power in being transparent because there really is nothing to hide, and people really get to see you and to know you. There is such true freedom in that, which is really what I think authenticity is about. It's the pathway to freedom. It's really allowing yourself the ability to live free. Do you think that authenticity is growing or diminishing right now in our society, in the dominant culture?
From what I can see in my perspective, it looks like it's growing.
Oh,
I think that people through the last year of challenges have just grown tired.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak for myself, and this is going to come out super judgy, and what else? I've got some stuff going on with social media, right? I've got some stuff going on with social media right now, and I'm just, God, dog. I just, that's where the who's who of authenticity and then who's not authentic, right? And I think that, that I just take issues with that, the comparison and, all the things that go along with that and the curated self-images and all of these things that we compare ourselves to that are not accurate.
Yes.
Even on my Instagram, I schedule these posts out. It's authentic.
Mm-hmm.
But is it real life, right? Like I got some stuff going on with social media right now. So that's just, again, me being 100% transparent.
I love that. I personally, when it comes to social media, I'm always thinking about what are the ways to engage this more authentically, because you're 100% right. It is the ways of which we get to think about what we want to share rather than, like what's really happening as we go.
Right? The pretty pictures and and the this and the that and the blah, blah. And I just, it's not good for my mental health. Yes. And I don't know that I want to, I'm doing some kind of deep feelings about social media right now and trying to figure out how I feel about it, because it just wouldn't surprise me at all if I make some choices to just, I don't know, not engage. I'm not about it right now. I'm just not happy about the messaging and the inauthentic, all those things, right?
Right.
There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a
better way. And what's interesting is I was reading an article, like just like things that come up on, I think it was like a Google recommendation that I happened to click on, and it talked about this idea of social media like fading to the background because of this reason, because it's becoming more and more storyboarded. It's becoming more and more designed, rather than it really being used for genuine connection. So I definitely feel where you're at, Kara. And I think a lot of listeners would agree with you. What do you think is when it comes to addiction, what do you think it is showing about ourselves and our society? Like, what do you think it has to teach us, this thing about addiction? And what solutions might we find together when it comes to how we manage addiction, how we care for addiction?
There's a lot I'm not sure quite where to start with that question.
Start anyway. Like I know that, what I'm starting to hear more through research is that addiction is pointing towards the lack of like genuine connection, just like we're talking about with social media. It's having real support that is authentic.
I can speak to the relapse rate right now and how challenging it is through COVID. Absolutely. Because of that lack of connection and that lack of ability and that lack of resources. This has been hard on me. I go to a 12-step meeting every morning online. And I intentionally create these safety nets around me because this is hard for and I can't imagine if you were just newly clean and sober, or, wanting to be, the challenges that are associated with that right now, trying to get clean and sober through COVID. I was fortunate that I got mine happen beforehand. But yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem right now. It's an epidemic. The challenge with, addiction, and those people who've been previously incarcerated, we are highly stigmatized. And I've had back-to-back interviews today. I haven't done an interview like in I don't know how long, and I had back-to-back.
I love it.
One earlier today, and the young lady asked me. It was for a high school. Isn't that awesome?
Oh, that is awesome.
Oh, they were so
needed. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh, it was so good, so good.
Lovely.
Oh, and she asked me, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I knew it. Oh, what did that woman ask me? Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Dang it. What was I talking about right before that?
So we were talking about addiction. Yeah.
Yes.
Loss of connection, especially during this time with pandemic and COVID and everything.
Yes. I can track it all the way up to there, and I just can't remember what this girl asked me in this interview. Dang it. It was so good, too.
It's like, if it comes back up, just share it when it comes.
My overarching point here is through COVID, it has been super challenging. And those of us who have previous incarcerations and drug addiction were super stigmatized. It's hard to find jobs. There's tons and tons of barriers. I want to say barriers that shouldn't be there, but it's just so hard. It is so hard to re-enter society after being incarcerated. And then trying to stay clean and sober on top of that. And the recidivism rate is in the 50th percentile the first year. And the reason is because there's barrier after barrier after barrier. It's by the grace of God and pure grit, determination, and some resources that I was even able to make it as far as I was. It's the decks are stacked against. It absolutely, and it is highly challenging. I work with people who struggle with addiction, and so I get some of those stigmas, right? Not everybody's willing to change or at that place of change and the stages of change, right? But one of the most rewarding experiences of my life is working with women who want to change, who want to change because the resource, again, the barriers and the resources, right? And because of my background, I have connections with all different kinds of people. And so it puts me in a place where I can connect with people who need help.
Yeah. I would love to explore more about the recidivism aspect that you're talking about, because my cousin is actually, she's like a warden, and she's She inspires me because she cares so much, and she is really honest about just the blocks, the blocks that exist, the changes that, the changes that are needed, and how there is, how hard it is, how challenging it is, really, when you do come out, to really get your life back on track, so that you don't end up back there. I would love to hear your thoughts, if you'd like to share them, about what things we could support, where could we put efforts towards, shifting that, where we could really make an impact when it comes to recidivism.
Sure. When I was released from incarceration in 2013, there were very few resources. I had no money, and I was living in a halfway house. So a halfway house is my home address. Mm-hmm. And I had no professional clothing. I didn't know if I was even marketable, and my teeth hadn't been fixed. And so, I looked like I struggled with some form of addiction. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get a job. Mm-hmm. No one would hire me. And I would go to interview after interview after interview after interview, and was told no, no, no. And I finally got involved with an organization in Denver. And actually, they're a global nonprofit called Dress for Success. Mm-hmm. I was involved with Dress for Success Denver here locally. Mm-hmm. They helped me with clothing, and then some professional resources. They were and are the springboard for so much change for me. They do so many amazing things in this community for women who are trying to, even just women who, for whatever reason, are experiencing some kind of transition. Obviously, mine was incarceration, but it could be substance abuse, it could be anything, whatever that transition is. They'll provide some resources and actual help. They also provided a network of women who were professional that I could, connect with. I had, our meeting was the meeting before I had my meeting with you tonight. I still meet with these women. Beautiful. 8 years later, and that's how impactful that was in my life. And so if you're moved by this, consider donating your clothes, professional clothes, to Dress for Success Denver. Consider volunteering your time, because they always need volunteers.
Oh, great.
Or just make a cash donation.
Right.
Or just give them some money. They are doing big things in this community. And now there are other organizations and other nonprofits in this city who are doing other great things for people who've been previously incarcerated, which is amazing. The resources have opened up quite at least they're more than what they were. Okay. But that still doesn't affect the barriers. So people still won't rent to us. People still won't give us jobs, right? Mm-hmm. Even though there's help and there's resources, it's still so hard. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So hard.
Well, I'm glad that you are a presence, right, to bring forward that message of change that's needed in that area. And I definitely will look for ways in which I can help, because I recognize, for me, when it comes to to our criminal justice system, I truly believe in restorative justice. I feel like I really believe that people are redeemable. And what does that say about a society if we choose not see people as redeemable? And that's exactly what we do when we make it so hard for people to reintegrate into society and be able to make an impact and change their story. And with the message of your story, right, of embracing the past, and in the shame of that past, it's like finding gold. It's finding the treasure of who you are, the power of who you are, that is carrying you forward, because you are able to make an impact. You are able to be that voice and that presence for other people who might be carrying shame for themselves, right? Because you're the example of having gone through it. And it's like, what a detriment that we keep ourselves from by not allowing the space for our gifts to come forward and for those paths to be renewed into something else. So I love that, Kara. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to talk about this climbing up the achievement ladder, girl, because you're a powerhouse. To be honest, you've done a lot. And in your talk, you really explained the drive, but also the need, right, to be the perfect example, to fit into this image of, what it is to be clean and sober, or clean and sober Kara, and what it felt like.
Yeah.
What are the ways of which we, like the detriment of that drive for achievement? And how can we shift achievement from one where we're doing it from lack and doing it from, I think your words were, centered and confident being, which I just love that.
Those were my words. Again, it's a decision. I'm no longer willing to sacrifice myself for anything, right? For anything. And that comes from the more I love myself, right? The more that I love and value myself and my soul, the less I feel the desire to achieve or do anything that's not nourishing for me. So just getting clear in my world for, what's important to me, and what's important to me is, nourishing my soul and making sure I'm healthy. And it's so interesting we're talking about this. I have lots of plates in the air right now. I just started a new role. I still have my business. I'm still doing some volunteer stuff. So I've got all of these things going on, and I'm very much aware of that. I'm at that point. I'm at that point where I've been here before, and I'm like, wait a second. I know this, right? And I'm not willing to do this. I need to dial it back. What is important to me, what, has to be done today, and then what isn't, right? What's not on the list. And I get more and more clear on that every day of how can I take care of myself so that I can show up just the best me possible, right? I mentioned that in the beginning of the interview about, what I do in my morning routine, and I do these things intentionally because it's nourishing to me. And then that's part of that, taking care of me. I've always operated from that half empty glass. And so, and oftentimes was giving from an empty place. And that's just not healthy for you. That's not healthy for me. That's not good for the collective.
Right.
And now that I have consciousness of that, I'm not willing to do it. Right. So I just don't. When I can't answer my phone and I can't give, I just don't. I just don't. Right. Because it's not helpful. It's not helpful for me to show up like that.
I love that. Yeah. For me, you're speaking to me a little bit in that being aware of your, what's important. Don't burn yourself out. And I'm constantly, having to pay attention to that. So I imagine that a lot of us out there are struggling with that. So heed that advice, and really listen. You talk about unapologetically real and the freedom of that, and really about showing yourself grace and love. And being unapologetically real is the path of self-love. How do you define self-love, and how would you explain what self-love looks like?
I think I just touched on it, a little bit about nourishing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say getting in touch with whatever our soul desires. So whatever our heart and soul, wants and desires.
Mm-hmm.
That has been a huge part of my self-love. And then there's, many different pillars of self-love, right? So self-acceptance and, all of those things that go into learning how to love us, love ourselves to the core, self-worth, self-acceptance. I am just in the baby stages of learning that. I am just in the stages of like figuring that out.
Yeah.
And it's transformational. It's so transformational. To try to nail down a definition of, of what that looks like, I would just say, for me, it's just not settling for anything less than what my heart and soul desires.
Ooh.
It's
love that.
That's what it is. That's what this is for me. And it's a journey of grace and acceptance, like radical acceptance. There's so many times, and I'll use this new job as an example because it's it's a low hanging fruit.
Right.
Where I would just have so much judgment over, all kinds of things, because it's challenging learning something new. And again, full transparency, I don't get this full, 100% right. Don't get me wrong. I'm still struggling like, oh my gosh. But before, the difference is, so if I juxtapose, some of the kind of the me before I had this understanding or consciousness of self-love, and then me, today, it's like just this overwhelming grace.
Yeah.
And the language has changed. Mama, you've got this. I love you so much. You're so intelligent. Keep going. Don't quit. Don't stop. You're amazing. Actually, it's more like you're fucking amazing.
Oh, I love it.
Right? So the language has changed from, you're stupid. You're never going to get that. Blah, 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 blah. Right? So it's now this empowering language of, dang it, I just love you, right? And that's my definition of self-love. It's just, I just love you, right?
Yes, I love that. Yeah, meeting your heart and soul's desire. I love that.
Oh yeah, not settling for anything less than what my heart and soul desires. That's one of my. You can't see my wall behind. You can only see me, but I've got all of my stuff, like my vision and all my affirmation. It's all here and I can see it. That's one of my like core beliefs, is not settling for less than what my heart and soul desires, because I spent so long doing so, so long. And now that I know that I don't have to, I'm not going to, I don't have to do that today.
Yes. I don't know about you, Carrie, but for me, when we talk about, because we're talking about soul.
Soul, baby.
Soul. For me, I didn't I thought that I was navigating my life. This has been a new awareness probably with the past couple of years. Like I thought I was navigating my life in this way where like I thought I was like listening to my soul's desires. Like I thought I was understanding that, and I realized that I was not. I realized that for myself, I've been operating from a place that wasn't really rooted to my soul, because if I really listened to my soul and what my soul wanted, it was much different than what I thought that I wanted. Do you think that life itself or the struggle with addiction. And hello, I'm a person who, has definitely struggled with addiction. And, I've gone to the support groups and I still do the work and the routines that you build, to continue to stay true to listening to that soul call. But do you think that there's a how much of our lives is spent running from or avoiding or suppressing that soul? And would you say that it's those hard moments, those moments that in our lives that are filled with some of the greatest shame that really bring us to the seat maybe of our soul? Would you say that that might be something that you experienced yourself going through this process of addiction and coming into your authenticity today?
That's a huge part of my story, and again, a part of my story that I was shameful over, particularly when I was released, particularly the meth part of my story, because there's so much stigma around that. And then being incarcerated part of my story, prison, like federally indicted, like federal prison, right? They're just like what? Lots of shame. I carried lots of shame through that and tried to figure out the best way I could, kind of live with that. And my way was, using it as a defense mechanism and telling the whole entire world about it. Today I feel like I do that more from a place of less from a place of bleeding and more of a place of just health and wellness of, hey, here's what I've gone through. It may or may not help you. I don't know, but I love you. So, it's a huge part of my values of that's who we are, right? Your adversity makes you, right? My adversity makes me. In fact, my talk when I was first creating it was our adversities define our identities. And that just didn't fit because mine isn't necessarily in an adversity, right? I did mine to myself. It's not as though I can say, oh, well, I was born into poverty or I was, any of those adversity type things. I was a drug addict, strung out on drugs. I can't say that somebody did that to me. And so I had to change my talk to, our stories define, our stories make up us who we are, right? Because that's more acknowledging of all the things, right? That I've done intentionally, stuff that, all the things that we've carried shame over, like divorces and cheating. And we could make a big long list of things that, you hear people having conversations about, like, oh my God, did you know that she cheated on, right? Like all the things that it is a society talk about, right?
Yeah.
Stop talking behind people's backs.
Right.
I've all done something. Send love, send prayers for that person, for whatever it is that you want in life, send that to them. Right. Like that was the purpose of my talk. And the way that I intentionally live my life every day is, we all have stuff, right? We all have whatever that is, whether you intentionally did it or not. I intentionally did mine. Right. And I deserve to be forgiven too.
Oh, yes.
I deserve to live life too. I'm worthy too, right? I'm abundantly worthy too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that worthiness piece, Kara. We're all walking around with a not enough story in us. And it was placed there through, so many of the pressures of life. And it's whenever we get to that moment in our lives when we're willing to lay that story down. And I think your talk was a really good example of finally laying it down and giving yourself the freedom. And that's what we can all hope to give ourselves, is the freedom to be authentic and real. So
freedom to be authentic and real.
Kara, thank you so much for being here tonight. Before we close out, is there anything else that you want to leave with our listeners tonight?
Love yourself. Love yourself more. Give yourself more grace. I remembered what I was going to tell you.
Oh my gosh. Just say it. Just share it.
I just remembered it. So that interview that I was doing, I was telling this young woman, she was so cute. She was like 17 or 18 years old and asking me these questions. And she asked me something similar to what you just asked me. And that's what triggered the memory. And I just said, I shared with her one of the exercises I did when I was early on in this journey of self-love, and I would look in the mirror, and I still do. So don't let me kid you that I've stopped doing this, because I straight up do this almost daily, right? So, I look in the mirror and it's this language of, gosh, I love you so much. I just love you so much. And when I first started doing it a year ago, I was like, I feel crazy. This is awkward, right? So I'm telling this teenage girl to do this in her face. So it was a podcast that we did today, but we did it. We like taped it over Zoom, but her face, she was like, you want me to what? And I'm like, yes, girl, get up in that mirror. And I want you to tell yourself all about it, how much you love yourself. And the awkwardness fades away, right? It does. It was awkward for a minute, but it's certainly not awkward now. Now, when I look in the mirror, there's this just genuine love of, girl, no matter what, I got you and I just love you, right? Like it's just such a profound sense of freedom. So that would be my ending message, is just love yourself more.
Love yourself more. And yeah, mirror work, girl, that mirror work is transformational. I mean, it's the simplest thing you can do, my God.
I've never done it before. I just hadn't connected with myself, like that. I love that you're familiar.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know what I didn't know.
Oh yeah. The very first time I did mirror work, a friend had me do it. She put me in the mirror and she was like, say I love you. And then don't stop.
She loved you.
And I was like, what? And I was like, I can do it. And so I did it. And she's like, keep going. And I was a mess. I was literally a mess. And that's when I was all like, okay, I get it. I have some work to do. And yeah, and I was like, and I will not stop until I can look at myself and know.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen.
And so
yep.
Bless that mirror work. It helps.
Yes, it does, baby.
Well, Kara, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was a pleasure talking with you and exploring your message. I hope that this has served everyone listening tonight. Just know your wholeness. Know that you matter. Know that your presence here in this world is important, and allow yourself the space and freedom to share it. Unapologetically.
Unapologetically, baby.
Have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you next week. I have Mackenzie, and we're going to be talking about, loving your career, loving your work, embracing that as who you are. So thanks for joining us tonight. Bye, everyone.